So welcome to Friday. This is wonderful. The sun is shining where I am, so hopefully it's shining where you are as well. And this is day 5 of our Get Your Mental Health in Motion event. So welcome and thank you for joining us. We're really excited to have Dr. Anita Federici with us today, talking about body respect from injection to empowerment. So, something that's been quite a bit of a challenge over the course of this pandemic. So we're really happy Anita was able to join us today. So Dr. Federici is a clinical psychologist and the owner of the Center for Psychology and Emotional Regulation. She holds an adjunct faculty position at York University and is a distinguished fellow of the Academy of Eating Disorders. Dr. Federici serves as the elected co-chair for the Suicide and DBT Special Interest Group for the Academy of Eating Disorders. She's provided more than 150 lectures, workshops, and invited talks on eating disorders and DBT, and her work has been presented at international conferences and published in peer-reviewed journals and invited book chapters. So one of those lectures or workshops or talks that she did was last night at the Our Health. And if you didn't get a chance to log in, it's actually already posted on Rogers TV Midlands. So it's there, and she's joined by a couple of other experts talking about mental health and addictions in the time of COVID. So if you didn't get a chance to see that one, please check it out on Rogers TV. So this week is our annual fundraiser, and we are raising money this year for the Child, Youth and Family Waiting Room at the Community Health Hub. So Waypoint has recently expanded our child and youth services. We are recruiting new clinicians for this program to help better serve this population, which we know is desperately needed. The specialty waiting room will provide a space that's welcoming, comforting, and safe, physically, mentally, and emotionally. And it's designed to reduce anxiety during visits, offer a space to play for these young ones, and have fun while waiting for an appointment, and hopefully increase receptivity to healthcare services. Our goal is $25,000 for this, and we have done very, very well thanks to all of our sponsors and our participants this week. I'd like to mention our sponsor for today's session, LeClaire Cremation. Thank you so much for being on board with us. It's been a couple of years since LeClaire's been with us sponsoring this event, so we are very, very grateful. Also, thank you to our title sponsors, Brissette Concrete Forming and Midland Honda, Pure Country 106, and the Doc 104.1. So they are fantastic sponsors of ours too, and very community minded. Today, we also have Captain Ken's in Penetang who are supporting us. $2 from each hoagie sold will be donated back to this campaign. So if you have a hankering for one of Ken's hoagies, which are delicious if you haven't had one, check it out today for lunch or dinner, and you'll be supporting this cause as well. These sessions are being recorded and will be available on our YouTube page. Probably today's Friday, probably not till Monday now for this one, but please do check it out if you want to recommend them to anybody. Thank you so much again for joining us, and welcome, Anita.
Thank you so much. It is always a pleasure to be here and to be part of this community. And to be part of Mental Health Awareness Week. So thank you so much. And, I'm particularly eager to talk about a very important topic, one that doesn't always, it's not always the thing that gets requested. However, it's one of the things that in my world, in the eating disorders and body image world, we are seeing a lot of difficulty as people move through the pandemic. And there's all kinds of things going on that we're going to talk about. So I really I sort of had two aims when we talked about this. When I started to put together this talk, I thought, well, who is this for? Who am I actually targeting? And I thought, well, this is for anyone with a body. When you hear the word body image, I think people naturally think about women or girls or things like that it's sort of a female sort of thing. And it's not, but everybody has a body. And everybody has an image or perception of what their body is, what it does, what it looks like, what it's supposed to do. And that transcends gender, culture, et cetera. We all deal with this. So I thought, how do I address this? And I only have about an hour. Well, I thought, okay, I'm going to break this into two parts. The first part, I want to talk about what most of you already know, I'm going to guess. How has COVID impacted the way we feel about our bodies? How do we start to understand our own unique body image stories? Where does that even come from? Why do I think about my body the way that I do? And how negative views of the body are maintained, especially during the pandemic. This is especially acute right now. So we're going to talk about that. However, I really want us to move away from some of these things and start to think about what can I do differently starting today to change my relationship with my body and actually perhaps influence those around me, my kids, my friends, things like that. So we're going to talk about how do we challenge stigmatizing views about the body and banish something that's known in the field as fat talk. I want to talk about the use of self-compassion with particular focus on how it reduces body dissatisfaction and starting to shift into viewing the body as a source of safety and wisdom. So the body not as the enemy or as the betrayer, but as the body as a well of information and ultimately safety. Okay. So that's what we're in for the next hour. I hope that is what you're signed up for today. One of the first things that I do when I start to talk about body image with clients and people is what does that mean? And I wish we were in person because I'd probably ask you, what do you think body image is? But I want to highlight that it's not a singular concept. Body image isn't one thing. It's actually quite a complex experience that really is an object of perception, and it's influenced by many, many, many factors that I'm going to ask you to think about this morning. One of my favorite quotes in a book that was published in 2012, the author wrote that the body is the most multi-sensory object in the world. There's nothing else that takes in more sensory information than the body. And that really makes me think about how hard it is to work with it and how we have to understand this in order to treat body image disturbances. So body image is the way that you think about your body, the beliefs and assumptions that you make about your body, the feelings you have. Like even right now, as I talk about your body, right? Some of you might already have emotions about it, feel triggered, feel things, have thoughts, images. What's your personal perception of your body? How do you think you look in the world? Right? We all have this image. Whether that image is accurate or not is also influenced by multiple factors that we're going to talk about. Just before we logged on live, we were commenting that, look, body image was a problem before the pandemic. As someone that specializes in the treatment of eating disorders and body dissatisfaction, we've been struggling with years for, in terms of the amount of people suffering. Now, rates of body dissatisfaction and self-hatred, self-loathing are on the rise in pretty substantive ways. So before we unpack some of that, like why is that happening, I want to also highlight that your body image is connected to everything. So why is it so important during Mental Health Awareness Week for us to sit and reflect on our relationship with our bodies? Right? And this is not just for people that may or may not have an eating disorder. This is for everybody, because we all have a body. Your body image is connected to your self-worth and your self-esteem. So people who have a poorer view of their body tend to have lower self-worth, lower self-esteem. It's connected to gender identity, gender orientation, sexual orientation, etc. Right? So the way that you feel about your body has everything to do with how you identify who you are in the world. Okay, so that's important. Everything to do with relationships and intimacy. For example, many people that I get the pleasure of working with struggle with being close to people, having sexual connections, intimacy in general, because they hate their bodies so much. And that has a massive impact on how they are able to relate to other people. Mood stability. It's really hard to feel emotionally safe when the body is seen as a source of pain and mistrust and betrayal right? Hard to feel emotionally regulated in that. And then of course, there's the big area of eating disorders. Okay, so body image is in most eating disorders, not all, but one's view of themselves across many eating disorders is unduly influenced by body. So, that you've got that kind of, quintessential experience of, if you get on the scale in the morning and the number is where you want it to be, or it's lower, it's a good day. If you get on the scale and it's higher or not where you want it to be, it's a bad day. And there's just so much that goes on in our lives. And we're seeing this in really young children as well, and young as ages 6 and 7 and 8 years old. So this is a huge issue in our world. And COVID, as some of you may know, has had a pretty big impact on our body image. We know that these are challenging times. There's no doubt about that. Nobody has been immune to more stress, more anxiety, tension, an increase in cortisol production. So when you're in that discomfort or stress responding, your brain says, holy smokes, COVID, this is a threat. I don't feel well. We produce adrenaline, we produce cortisol, and this has an impact on how we feel about ourselves. Our usual ways of coping have been removed or greatly changed. So ways that we would have regulated our emotions or maybe coped with body image in healthy ways have also been shifted, right? It's hard to talk to people, it's hard to see people, it's hard to get some movement when we need movement, etc. So that's important to reflect on. Changes to activity levels. Our bodies have changed for a lot of us in COVID. A lot of people say to me, oh, I've gained weight during COVID. And I say, well, I don't think that's terribly abnormal. We're in a stay-at-home order. We're a lot of us working, sitting at our desks all day. We're actually trying to survive a pandemic. So I don't want to overly pathologize weight gain, especially during this time. But changing activity levels also changes the way we regulate emotion. Why is this important? Well, it's important because when we have more stress, more cortisol released, we can't go do all the other things that we used to do to cope, and we're feeling locked up in our homes. Food can become a way of regulating emotions. And again, that's not necessarily a negative thing. If you heard my talk last night, I mentioned that I'm an Italian, I come from an Italian background. And so food has always been part of our culture. It is how we have coped with loss and grief and happiness and all kinds of things. So I don't want to overly, condemn that. However, we do have people who are feeling so distressed and having so much trouble tolerating uncertainty that food can become overused as a way of soothing, which can impact body image. It can also go the other way, where people are under eating, lack of structure, lack of accountability. And for some people, not eating is another way of soothing an unsettled biology. Okay. So we can't underestimate the psychological and the physical impact of the pandemic on our bodies. And yet, day after day on social media, and just in conversations that I have with clients, with friends, there's this kind of constant hum, this kind of constant dialogue that really we're supposed to not gain weight. We're supposed to be in shape. We're supposed to somehow have some super body, even during a pandemic. And it just highlights to me how far off we are and how critical we are of our bodies and the incredible things that our bodies do for us. So let's talk a little bit about what's particularly increased during COVID. Jokes about weight gain. I don't know if anybody's not seen, the jokes about COVID-15 that then went to the COVID-19 and then the COVID-20, sort of this remake or, of the freshman 15 kind of idea. And the number of memes and jokes that were sent to me by people going, can you believe this? Or people who thought it was funny, was really shocking and discouraging, frankly, for me to see in the beginning. So we're seeing a lot more weight and fat phobia happening in the pandemic. Increased pressure from the diet industry. They are capitalizing on this like it's nobody's business. I don't know what your social media feeds are, but it's very common for me to be inundated with ads for intermittent fasting and Noom and all these other weight loss, diet, gimmicky sort of programs. And I've really noticed an increase. And if you're not careful with your social media, you will, in terms of controlling your ads, you are inundated. And this is particularly important for our kids who may not be so aware of how to manage what they're actually seeing. The other thing that we're all doing is we're spending more time on social media. And I think that's okay to a degree. We need to find ways of connecting. However, recent research has shown us that the more time that we spend on social media, two things also increase. Body dissatisfaction increases and emotion dysregulation increases. So the more that you or your family spends on Facebook and TikTok and Instagram and all those other, Snapchat, the more dysregulated over time they become, and the more body image problems we see developing. And part of that is because there's so much toxic diet culture embedded in social media that it's really hard to ignore. And so that was my little sort of add on there. So let's think about this for a minute. So as I'm talking, I want you to take a moment to reflect on your own unique body image story. Nobody has the same body image story. Your body image story is made up of a variety of different factors and experiences. So if I'm just going to look here, so if I was meeting you in my office and we were talking about this, I might say, tell me what it was like growing up. What were the things that you learned about body image, what a body is supposed to look like? What were the dominant models in your family? Your parents, your aunts and uncles, cousins, siblings, were there expectations about fitness, about, mobility? What was the family of origin or your background, and go back like 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years old. So that's an important part of how we come to understand the body that we sit here today watching this video with me about. Physical changes is another important one. Physical changes impacts our body image in lots of ways. So puberty, this is why we often see the development of eating disorders during puberty, because the body's changing. Girls are developing breasts and hips, which can feel scary, can feel different, especially in a culture that is pretty specific about what's acceptable and what's not. So if your body starts to change in a way that doesn't meet the cultural influences, you might experience weight and shape-based bullying, which is also rampant on social media. And so for the parents out there, be mindful of what your kids are engaging with and who they're talking to and kind of what that content is, if you can. Physical changes, and I also want to add here, it is absolutely expected and normal that our adolescents gain weight. There's this message in diet culture that sort of shames or gets parents concerned that gaining weight during adolescence is something must be wrong. No, that's actually what your body's supposed to do. You're supposed to store more fat. Your body's supposed to change. The brain is still developing. The body's still developing. I would be concerned if I wasn't seeing weight gain in the adolescent group, right? So I think it's just important to realize what's actually supposed to happen in our bodies. Like I also think about menopause. This is another physical change. Yeah, our bodies change. They go through all kinds of changes. And yet there's this mass messaging, like you should get rid of menopause belly and you should, and I'm thinking, your body in its infinite wisdom is actually changing and shifting. And that can be scary. And your body's pretty smart. And, it's just that the cultural influences that we have really impact how we come to understand our bodies. Physical changes, I will also say, have to do with injuries disease, illness. So I've worked with people that have had mastectomies, people that have lost limbs, people who have debilitating neurodegenerative diseases and they can't move the same way anymore. These things all influence your thoughts and images and expectations about your body. And we've got to make sure that these things aren't also toxic. Okay. Peers, what's your friend group like? Who are the people that you engage with most often? And do they have specific beliefs or behaviors, that send messages subtly or not so subtly about what your body's supposed to be able to do? You see this in the fitness world a lot, that we're supposed to have, especially as we age. Like as I get into my late 40s, my body is certainly not the same as my 20s. And yet there's this messaging that somehow I'm supposed to have this hard body. I should have muscle. I should be able to, lift a certain amount of weight. And I too get caught in that, I'm being lazy, or and then I stop and I go, no, that's actually not true. I think it's important for me to find a way to be healthy and protect my organs and my body as best I can. But I'm not supposed to have a hard body. I'm supposed to have softness. I'm supposed to have rolls. I'm supposed to be able to bend. And I don't, this expectation that no matter what age you are, you're supposed to somehow look a certain way, I think is very damaging to our sense of what we are, who we really are on this planet. Brain and biology is also important to understand. Your temperament actually contributes to how you understand and mediate all of this other stuff. So if you're more prone to impulsivity, or you're a really anxious type of person, you might be more likely to be influenced by these things and have a poorer view of your body versus somebody that, is more, less impacted. They're not so anxious. They're more stable in their sense of self, more emotionally grounded. They tend to be able to have a bit more of a buffer, if you will. So one of the things that we work on sometimes in treatment is helping people work with their unique temperaments to help them moderate all this other stuff that's going on. And this is just some of what influences our sense of body. So as you're thinking about this, I want to talk a little bit more now about, so what do we do? If I'm noticing that I'm struggling, how do I start to challenge or become empowered in my own stance around stigmatizing views about the body and this concept called fat talk? So one of the things that I like to do on social media is, put together some quotes or thoughts that I have. And so one of them is this, it's a scary thing really to live in a culture that profits from how much we reject our bodies. The culture depends on us. The diet industry is a multi-billion-dollar industry for a reason, right? I used to work in the casinos back, 25 plus years ago to put myself through undergrad and grad school. And when I started to get into eating disorders and body image work, I thought, oh my gosh, the diet industry, it's like the casino business. You're not meant to win. You are not meant to win. That's why it works. It's for them. So it's really hard though, because a lot of the ads out there are actually designed and sort of count on us not liking our bodies. So let's take a few moments here and reflect on your own body image self-critic. And we all have one, I think. I don't think I've ever met someone that didn't have at some point in their life some negative views about their body. So I'm going to ask you over the next few moments with me to start to reflect on the judgments that you might have and the assumptions that you have about body weight and shape. What do you think when you see yourself in the mirror? What do you think when you're out in public? I know that this is reduced right now, but when you see different body shapes and sizes, what is the self-critic that sits on your shoulder and gives you negative information about your body? We're going to talk for a few moments too about making a commitment today perhaps to banish fat talk. I'll talk about that. I'm also going to encourage you to consider cutting ties once and for all with diet culture and how to do that. And I want us to think through redefining ideas about what success actually means and what beauty actually is. So let's unpack. So one of the first things I like people to do is to start to become aware of fat talk. Fat talk is a phenomenon that researchers have been looking at since the early 90s. They actually started looking at it in adolescent girls after researchers started to notice just the prevalence of self-deprecating comments made among girls in high school and in elementary school. So it's a type of conversation that people engage with in which they are denigrating their own bodies. So this is the typical, you're in a change room and somebody says, "Oh my God, my thighs are so fat. Like, I'm so disgusting." And what's fascinating about it is that it's almost this normative thing. If you were to sit, I know we can't do this right now, but if you were to sit and be a fly on the wall, in the hallway of a change room, you would for the large part of your day hear fat talk almost constantly, right? Gosh, oh, I'm so disgusting. Oh my gosh, I can't believe I look like this. What, people, they make these awful comments. And so we know that this is not just unique to adolescent girls. This is widely detected across age groups, gender, cultural backgrounds. Think about your own life. If you look at this slide, or this part of my slide on the right, I want you to just focus here. These are some facts that were put out a little while ago. 93% of women admit to engaging in fat talk. So the majority of women are engaging in this kind of behavior, and 63% said they do it at least once a week, if not multiple times a day. So I think that's something to be aware of. What I think is fascinating is this part here. 62% said they feel compelled to participate in fat talk when they hear other women doing it. So, you've been on the other end of that. Somebody says like, "Oh my gosh, I've gained so much weight. I'm so disgusting." The most common response is, "Oh, me too. I am just, it's this." And there's this kind of normative engagement that goes on around this. And I'm going to talk to you about what you can do to start to change this. Yet 70% said they mostly talk about themselves. So fat talk is almost always about yourself. It's this way that people have started to engage in talking about their behavior. And I'll give you an example. A long time ago, I worked in a group, and a person, she would come in and she lives in a larger body, and she would come in and she would always make these fat talk comments. She would come in and say things like, "Oh, look out, make room for the fat woman." Like and she'd sort of chuckle and she'd have a seat and then I remember the second time she came in and she said, there was something about the chairs, and she said, "Oh, give me the biggest chair. I have the widest load." And she sort of laughed. And I stopped her in front of the group and I said, "Do you notice what you're doing right now?" And she sort of looked at me. She said, "I'm sitting down in my chair, And I said, "Well, you're doing that, but you're doing something else." I said, "Do you notice?" She sort of looked at me and she said, "Oh, the comments about my body?" I said, "Yeah. I've just noticed that the last couple of times that I've met you, that's one of the first things that you do when you come in the room. And I'm kind of curious about whether you're aware of that or you understand what that is." And she said, "Oh, I always do that." "Okay, why do you do that?" And she started to talk about how she does it because it makes other people feel more comfortable. That was her belief. She says, "I know they're thinking about it, so I'm just going to say it anyway." And the group was so fabulous. And I said, because you could see the group kind of having a reaction. I said to her, can I ask the group? And she said, "Yeah." And the group said, "I don't actually feel more comfortable." And another person said, "I actually feel like it kind of reinforces the idea that it's okay to make fun of people's bodies." And we had this really I thought, brilliant conversation about this. And I said to this woman, I said, how about today? Let's make today the last day you speak negatively about your body. It's the last time. It's done. And I actually feel emotional. I do this work so much, and I just think it's so powerful. And she said, oh, okay. Like she said, I'll try that. And from that moment on, there was one other time a few weeks later where she came in, she started to make the comment, she caught herself. And she started over the weeks to talk about how much this has changed. She used to do this when she used to go everywhere. And it started to help her feel better. It wasn't about everybody else. It was so toxic that she was talking about herself in this demeaning way. And so I want to emphasize, how I don't want to underestimate the power of your own language about yourself and your body. And it's got to start with you. Right? To change what's going on in the culture starts with each one of us who are here listening today. The other thing that I ask people to do is to start to really become mindful of bias, stigma, and discrimination and how they show up in your world, because it's everywhere. I see it all the time. So if it's in my world, it's in your world. I talked a little bit about jokes based on one's weight and shape, and I'm going to show you a slide in a moment about a pretty empowering thing that I think a group of people did about this. Assumptions that a larger bodied person is lazy or lacking willpower. This has been happening for decades, but there's still this, again, this underlying, not so underlying, belief that if you're in a larger size, you're actually not eating well and you're lazy. In fact, some of the most in shape, healthy people that I know live in a body that the medical world would say needs to lose weight. But they don't need to lose weight. They're actually healthier than a lot of other people I know who meet the cultural standards of weight. Hiring practices, pay attention to hiring practices, even in yourself, if you're the person that does the hiring or what you notice in your workplace. There's a lot of research around this, biases around people being hired simply because of appearance, because of weight and shape, same qualifications. Even if the larger bodied person is more qualified, the research shows that it's the thinner person that often gets hired. Okay, so these are things that I want us to start to change and shift in our world. Doctors, again, assuming that health problems are related to higher weights. There's a whole other seminar I'd like to give on weight science and weight theory to really start to challenge this idea, because that's not what the research tells us. Being in a larger body does not necessarily mean that you are more at risk in the way that the media promotes it to be. Often waiting rooms, airplanes, concert venues only have small chairs. So if you're somebody that has an office, or you are going to an office, start to pay attention. Chairs need to fit all body shapes and sizes, etc. Or media campaigns that constantly show larger bodied individuals eating fast food, sitting, being sedentary, or trying to squeeze into clothing. And to me, this is discrimination and stigma everywhere you look. And part of being empowered in your body is not being afraid to have some of these hard conversations. And part of having hard conversations is knowing the facts. So some people over the years have said to me, well, but these things, they motivate people, No, they don't. No. Teasing people, commenting on people's weight and shape, bugging them about going, to the next fitness, club with you. No, that actually doesn't motivate what you think of as healthy behavior. It actually triggers physiological and behavior changes, such as people are more likely to turn to food, both over and under eating, to manage the stress of people talking about their bodies. That's the irony. It decreases self-regulation. So the more that your body feels like it's in the spotlight or being talked about by your family or other people, the more that, again, you're going to have that stress response, and you're not going to feel so stable. And you're going to have more cortisol and adrenaline being released, which actually impacts many things around hunger, fullness cues, emotion regulation, and so on. And I don't know about you, but most people who are teased about weight and shape don't really want to show up for more social events, particularly show up at the gym, etc., where a lot of these assumptions or stigma pieces of bias and discrimination are highly visible. So what do? Well, I'm part of the Academy for Eating Disorders, an excellent international group of clinicians, of researchers, of therapists, of parents, of people with lived experience. It's a fantastic organization to be a part of. They wrote a letter a number of months ago during COVID, because they said there were so many late night talk show hosts making all kinds of discriminating comments about weight gain, et cetera, et cetera. And so they have this whole letter. It's just brilliant that they sent. And we've actually seen a change in some of the late night talk show monologues. And part of the letter said, negative judgments and stereotypes targeting higher weight individuals are so ingrained in our culture that fat jokes, they're readily understood by all and often go unquestioned and unchallenged. My invitation to you this morning is to not be the person who sits quietly in the audience, that you become somebody who's not afraid to say, I don't agree with that. I don't think it's okay to make fat jokes or jokes at all about anybody's body. Be willing to have uncomfortable conversations and to actively challenge myths about weight and body weight and shape and diet culture. It's a big part of what my team and I do. We really try to educate parents, school boards, clients, and our families and friends to really move away from from diet culture and these myths and misconceptions about body weight and shape. Again, there are things, if you're going to be on social media, then I suggest that, following, the anti-diet culture movement is really key in terms of starting to develop a better relationship with your body. And I loved this. This was sent to me by a colleague. And Megan here, this registered dietitian, she says, let us all make a pact right now that when we see people we haven't seen for a while because of the pandemic, we will not comment on their bodies. We will not comment on weight loss or weight gain. We will not make jokes about the quarantine 15. We will not comment on bodies. This happened to me a few months ago. I saw someone, she came out of the doorway, a family member, I hadn't seen her in a while. First thing she says to me, she grabs a sweater, she comes to the door, she grabs a sweater, she puts a sweater over her body and she says, oh my God, just don't pay attention to my body. I've gained so much weight. She hadn't even said hello to me yet. But the first thing so that's her fat talk happening. Now I've got to be mindful there myself, right? What's my response going to be? I don't care what your body looks like. I am so relieved to see you. It is so good to see you, right? I'm not going to engage in fat talk, nor am I going to comment on her body because I don't want to reinforce that. And that's not who she is. So I love stuff like this. I also love cartoons like this, right? Which bit would you alter first, says the person looking in the mirror. And her very wise friend says, the culture. You are the culture. You get to change yourself. And when you change yourself, you change the culture. The single most effective thing you can do is cut ties with the dieting industry. And the dieting industry, it has gotten smart over the years. They don't call themselves the diet industry so much anymore. They have taken over words like wellness and health and, and so it looks like it's under the guise of wellness. And when you actually look at it, it's no different than starvation diets from the 70s and 80s when you really break them down. So I teach people, and I again encourage you after our talk today, from now on, to not be a passive recipient of diet culture. And I often say things like, the only cleanse that I endorse is a social media one. I'm not going to endorse a fasting cleanse or a juice cleanse or anything like that. But if you're going to do a social media cleanse, and we're going to really look at who you follow and why you follow them. And we're going to start to take charge of your ads on social media. And I'll show you something that I did recently. Some of you might have seen it already on my Instagram account. But I want you to learn the truth. And the truth actually isn't out there. It's out there, but it's not out there in the mainstream. You have to go digging for it. And it scares me a lot for our kids, for our youth, who they don't know what they're looking for. So they're going to get inundated with messages that actually they're not grounded in science about body weight and shape and eating. Follow body positive, body neutral, health at every size, diet, anti-diet culture accounts and influencers. Man, they are out there doing an exceptional job. So those of you that follow me online, you can see who I follow, and it gives you an idea of who some of the real powerhouses out there are, really breaking down stigma and discrimination. So this is me. I like to use little cartoons like this. This is me when people confuse diet culture with science, right? Because again, like I said, the majority of what you're seeing out there, is not based on science. So here's something that I did. I apologize for a little bit of language. I do that sometimes just to grab attention out there on social media. So what can you do? Well, here's something you can do. What do you do when you see these ads from the dieting industry? Here are my steps. Step 1, observe. This is a bullshit ad, okay? This is not science. This is diet culture. Step 2, select, report ad, not hide ad, report ad. Step 3, select, it's a scam or it's misleading, because it is. Step 4, hit submit, and you get this nice little thanks for reporting this ad message. And then step 5, go on and enjoy your day free of diet culture. Now, people often comment, they're like, I have to do that 5 million times a day. I do it a lot, and I am noticing a shift now. I am noticing a big shift in what I'm seeing on my social media feeds, but I've had to be active. I can't be a passive recipient. So while you're doing all that in the background, right, I want you to think about how you define success. And I see a lot of this, but my thought right now is, please don't define your success in managing this pandemic by the shape or size of your body. Your body has done an amazing job over this last, I don't know, where are we, 15, 16 months, in keeping you going, in holding you up. And we don't want to define success based on our body shape and weight. Likewise, redefining beauty. I go through this exercise with people, and I'm going to ask you to do it with me now in your homes. Think about people that you really admire. Like, who comes to mind? Who do you really admire? And what is it that you like about them? I might do a whole session with somebody just on this slide. So I'm doing this very quickly in the interest of time, but what is it that you like about them? Why do you admire them so much? What is their body weight and shape? Do you evaluate them solely on their body? Or do you admire them because of their body weight and shape? And if their body weight or shape changed because of illness, injury, or whatever, would you lose admiration for them? In my experience, like even as I do this with you right now, people pop into my mind. And a lot of them, it's funny, a lot of them are women that I grew up with. Again, in an Italian culture, the women that I admire, who taught me so many things, who've gone before me, were not wayfish, thin women. They were larger boned, larger bodied, incredible, warm, amazing women that I still model my life after. It has nothing to do with what they look like. It's who they are. And I invite you to think about that. Who do you admire? Who do you respect? Who do you look up to? Who do you want your kids to be like? All that kind of stuff, right? Think about these things and expand, break open your idea of what beauty and success actually means. In this last piece that I have with you, I want to bring us to concepts that involve self-compassion, because the more self-compassionate you are, the less you can hate your body. So there's this inverse relationship. As self-compassion increases, it's sort of incompatible with self-hatred. You can't kind of have both. And so, we often talk about things like this. You can't hate yourself into healing. And you certainly can't hate yourself into coping more effectively with a pandemic. And yet, on my team, we see a lot of self-hatred, a lot of self-loathing, a lot of self-criticism. And it's really important to realize that that punishment stance, or that cruel stance that we have of ourselves at times, actually takes us further away from being grounded and safe, and stops our ability to heal. So this was, I don't know who did this originally. It's one of my favorite reminders, to be kind to your earth suit. Okay, we get one earth suit. And some of us, struggle more than others. And this is what we've got. This is what I've got. Whatever it's doing, whatever it can do, whatever it can't do, this is my earth suit. It's the suit that's going to carry me through the planet, that's going to let me meet you, that's going to let me do things in my life. And self-compassion, when it's related to body image, really is about cultivating a deliberate practice of being nice to yourself, being good to yourself. And I don't just mean, bubble baths and tea, although those are lovely pieces. I mean banishing fat talk. I mean speaking about your body using non-judgmental and non-stigmatizing language. So sometimes I'll have somebody that comes into the office who says, oh my gosh, Anita, I hate my body. I hate this, and I'm feeling so gross, and look at this. And I might say, okay, hold on. I want to hear what you're feeling, because what you're feeling is important. Back up, tell me what you want to tell me about what you're feeling, but without using any judgmental language. So tell me about your body, no judgment. And you really see how hard that is for people to talk about themselves without judgment. And yet it's a transformative practice. Focus on what your body can do for you, not what it can't. And this attitude of gratitude, we now know from neuroscience, actually changes or rewires your brain. So the more that you can focus on, at least I can. At least I for some people that can walk, they could say, at least I can walk. I work with a woman in a wheelchair, and she says, at least I can sing and breathe and watch my kids grow up. Yes, that is your body fighting for you to be here. It might not look the way you want it to look. It might not do all the things you want it to do. And there's often some grief and loss that happens. And if you think about how complex our brain is and our bodies, and just, it's flabbergasted. I sort of feel flabbergasted at times when I think about the fact that we're all sort of on this planet, because it's pretty amazing. Your body, your earth suit, deserves a bit more credit than what the dominant culture prescribes. So practicing being with your body instead of doing to your body. We, especially in Western culture, we have this way of, what are doing to, sort of whipping the body into shape and sort of trying to, mold it and craft it. And I just think, oh my goodness, the poor body is like, I'm on this journey with you. What would it be like to start to cultivate a stance of allowing, of being with, of accepting, and I need more than an hour to actually do justice to some of these topics. But a recent talk that I went to through the Australia and New Zealand Academy for Eating Disorders, they had this slide that I thought was really kind of interesting to think about. Like if you had something like this on your bulletin board, or your, body image is connected to all of these things. Are you eating in a balanced, non-dieting manner? So again, for people that struggle with eating disorders, you can't really resolve body image dissatisfaction in the active presence of an eating disorder. So if your nutrition and your food intake and fluid intake is off, it's also going to influence your body image. Exercise, and by exercise, I mean movement, balanced movement, not over exercise and obsessive exercise, and not sedentary. Our body does need us to move and stretch. It also needs us to rest. Where are you resting in this pandemic? Where are you nurturing your body and taking care of your physical body and your medical needs? Are you self-soothing? Are you practicing self-compassion? How are you engaging with people? And then there's the external pieces, right? The environmental factors that I've just talked about more so in this particular talk this morning. What are you doing about the environmental factors that influence your day? Do you have a spiritual practice? So people that have a spiritual practice, a set of beliefs, tend to do better when it comes to mental health in general, but also when it comes to body image, right? That you are more than your body, okay? And self-awareness and mindfulness. I know Waypoint has done an excellent job this week. And I got to I sit on a panel last night with Nicole Mace, and she led us through some mindfulness. And I can't overstate the importance of mindfulness and self-awareness when it comes to working with your body. Finally, and this is a hard one, and I wanted to go here today because I think it's really important to start to see your body as a rich source of wisdom and safety. And I say this to all of you out there who have trauma, who have an eating disorder, who have a physical condition where the body doesn't feel safe. The body you've learned that the body is not so, you feel like the body is not so wise. And I'm speaking to all of us, and one of my, again, favorite quotes, and when they said, love your enemy, I took a breath and loved myself. So again, this idea of starting to move away from the body as the enemy and the traitor, to figuring out, how do I love this earth suit that I'm going to walk around in life with? Your body is so very wise. It is far more wise than we've been led to believe. It's such a rich source of data that what is really harmful is that we turn away from the body. We try to live in this rejection of body, or manipulating the body. And what we do when we do that is we shut down rich sources of knowing and data, right? Your body is actually, again, the most sensory object in the world. It's actually designed to help you navigate life, even when it's gone through trauma, even when it's gone through pain and loss and all kinds of things. There's this inner wisdom that our bodies hold. And in therapy, we work on helping people reconnect to that. We have to have a willingness to listen to our bodies, especially when our bodies are telling us things that we might not want to hear. And with practice, and sometimes with therapy. So some of us out there, we need more help. It's hard to do this on your own. The body can become a place of safety, security, and groundedness. That's the biggest thing I've probably learned in the last, well, I was going to say the last 25 years as a psychologist, really, but nah, my 46 years on the planet, I've really come to learn that my body, as hard as it's been at times, my body is actually one of the safest places for me to be. But it's taken lots of years to get there, and it's going to keep taking me years to continue. So I got a few more minutes, and I just want to highlight these few slides because I think they're important. Dialectics. What is body dialectics? Dialectics teaches us that more than one thing can be true or valid at the same time. And when it comes to body image, we're pretty black and white. So a few pieces that I'm going to end with. For example, you can say, I wish my body was different. You can want and long for a different body. And at the same time, you can start to cultivate respect for your body, for all it does for you. Both can be true at the same time. It doesn't have to be either or. I can feel frustrated that I'm older, larger, slower, way less flexible than I used to be, and feel deep gratitude that my body has carried me through all these years. Both are true at the same time. I can acknowledge that I have gained weight over the past year during COVID in this incredibly stressful time, and I can treat myself and my body with kindness and respect. Both can be true at the same time. So I leave you with, you have two homes, the earth and your body. Take good care of them, and they'll take good care of you. So thank you for today. If you have comments or questions, you can find me, you can email me, you can find my amazing team. We are here, and I've got a few more minutes here with you this morning if there are some comments that you want to make.
Wow. You'll have to forgive me. I'm feeling a bit emotional after that talk, and I didn't expect to. So, yeah, it's so interesting how, you know, I thought I was very, you know, fairly body positive, and you know, it's interesting that the part of me that still falls prey to that diet culture, right? Like, you know, even if I'm 90 to 95% body positive most of the time, the other 5 or 10%, I do consider it, right? Like, I look and I fall prey to that marketing, and it's yeah, it's really interesting to hear your, you know, and thank you for sharing that and all of your suggestions. I'm just checking out the chat here. Lots and lots of thank yous. I haven't seen any questions.
Thanks, everybody. No, and that's okay. There's a lot.
Yeah.
It's a bit of a heavy, like, I feel.
Oh, yeah, we've got a question. Yeah, awesome. Go ahead. Oh, did you have a question?
Well, that's okay.
Maybe not.
I do have one, Anita. If
Hi, Holly. Hi. Yeah.
So we have a bit of a multi-generational history of eating disorder in my family. What advice do you have for parents in how they deal with their own biases, their own patterns of behavior, so that you don't increase the risk of your kid having the same challenges?
That's hard for me to answer effectively in a couple of moments here. However, I think one of the pieces from today would be the more awareness that you parents can have about these pieces, the better. So, you know, getting involved in terms of how your kids, first of all, being aware of your own biases, you know, because in order to stop that generational piece, because part of it is that eating disorders are genetically based. So when you come from families with eating disorders, there is a bigger likelihood that children could develop it. But remember, the environment is key. We often say genes load the gun, the environment pulls the trigger. So you can have kids that are vulnerable to the development of an eating disorder, but if the environment is body neutral, body positive, et cetera, and is working with some of the things that I talked about today, you're going to influence whether or not those kids go on to develop perhaps an eating disorder. So Holly, if parents are willing, be aware of your own biases, assumptions, and just the way that you are around food, weight, and shape, et cetera. And be involved in terms of what your kids are getting involved with in social media, knowing that they're going to be inundated with diet culture, very toxic messages. So be active in their understanding of body. And to be honest, there are so many great body image books for kids right now. You just do a good search on Google, and there's so many that are about diverse body shapes, sizes, and cultural practices around body. We are so fortunate to live in an area. I've learned so much from the First Nation Indigenous culture around what body really means and what beauty really means. And it has nothing to do with your weight and shape. So I think I need more time to answer that in a really rich way.
That's great, though. Thank you. Thank you so much.
I'm aware of time. I know that we're right at the 11th.
So thank you, Anita. That was amazing. So grateful for you to share your time with us today. Again, this session is being recorded and will be available on Waypoint's YouTube channel. We'll also share those links on our other social channels as well. So if you're able to join us today at 12, we have another talk from Dr. Rob Meter talking about virtual learning and isolation.
He's so good.
Another important topic right now. And then this evening at 7 o'clock, we have Giant's Tomb playing some music. So just an evening that you can put it on in the background and enjoy your Friday evening. Thanks again to our sponsors, LeClaire Cremation Center. And again, don't forget to head over to Captain Ken's to get yourself a hoagie. The Zoom link is the same for all sessions. So please join us again later today. Take care, everyone. Thank you, Anita.